Why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome all to How to Become a Leader in the Trump Resistance. Today's episode is titled How We Fight Organizing Resistance. You are attending a webinar of the Resist Trump campaign, whose vision is a future without Trump and his enablers in power. Our mission is lawful, nonviolent, civil resistance of Trump and his enablers. And our values are collaboration, integrity, nonpartisanship, and professionalism. If you would like to get more information about the Resist Trump campaign through its orientation guide or through the orientation event, then or to attend the orientation event, excuse me, please select some of the links that I'm dropping in the chat just now. So I've just put those in the chat and those should be available to you now. My name is Nevin Kamath and I go by Nevin K, oftentimes in organizing spaces. I'm going to be the moderator or one of the moderators of tonight's event. And my role is the director of the Resist Trump campaign. I would love to allow my fellow moderators tonight, Tracy and Carolyn, to introduce themselves as well. Tracy, you want to go first?
Sure. Hello. I am Tracy A, and I am based here in Austin. I've been working with Resist Trump almost since the beginning. I am here mostly to make sure that our democracy survives. And I want to do everything I can to make sure that I can do whatever to make that happen.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. How about you, Carolyn?
Hi, so I'm Carolyn. I'm in Olympia, Washington. I have low bandwidth. Sorry you don't see my picture. I lead a national grassroots organization, but I also participate in many others, including Resist Trump as a volunteer.
It's great to have you here, both of you. Thanks, folks. We're going to go ahead and proceed, and we're going to discuss the First Amendment first. I wanted to invite Carolyn to read it for us.
So the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Thanks, Carolyn. Folks who are here tonight, we are utilizing 2 to 3 of those very freedoms in this very meeting. You can probably see or guess the ones that they are. But I'll just make it real straightforward. We're definitely using freedom of speech, using the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and we are discussing ways to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Lawful nonviolent civil resistance is protected by the First Amendment and has been described elsewhere, including in the link that I'm about to share in the chat that I just did. And we'd like to share this information up front just to reassure everyone who's here that we're engaged in lawful, peaceful activity that is protected by our nation's Constitution. This series is a 12-part series that you're joining, and it is a drop-in series that you can join anytime. The series is split into 3 modules: level 1, level 2, and level 3. Each module ends with what we're calling a major assignment. The first assignment is to host a get-together in the real world using the Resist Trump campaign infrastructure. We have set the deadline for people in this group who want to do that assignment to hold that get-together no later than Sunday, July 20th. That's about, give or take, 3.5 weeks from now. So do keep that in mind as a deadline or a date to have in the back of your mind of, hey, you know what? I should probably use the mobilized infrastructure to set something up. And the questions that we're asking you in the Google Classroom that is freely available to everyone in this course will make it much easier for you to think about your goal, your location, and the supplies you need for that event. It can be something as simple as hosting people at the library, at a park, at a coffee shop, in your living room, wherever it is. We want you to get into the habit of hosting get-togethers because that is one of the key duties and responsibilities of an organizer. Next, we want to do module 2 after we complete module 1, which concludes in an assignment, which is to run a lawful protest. Now, that will be a little bit more complex, and we want to prepare you for that with appropriate training. Our first gray module will be knowing your rights. The next one will be using social media, and so on and so forth. De-escalation and digital security will be the third one. And the fourth one will have an expert speaker on actually running a lawful protest. Again, it can be as simple as like walking from your living room with a few signs out to your sidewalk. That can be as simple as it gets. Or you can make it more complex than that, and that would be great too. But you can use our mobilized infrastructure to post the event to attract new people, or to tell your friends about it and to have them register through the event and keep it as a private event. And then finally, the last module, level 3, ends in an assignment called Starting a Resist Pod, which is a group of 2 or 3 people who are willing to get together on a regular basis and do direct actions related to lawful, nonviolent civil resistance of Trump and his enablers. And we believe that the more resist pods that we can form around the country, the more likely it is that we will succeed in developing chapters, affiliates, and compatriots in this work of resistance that we're all involved in. So do share this webinar with friends and family if they're interested in this kind of work. And feel free to invite people into this space because we've got plenty of room and we need as much help as we can get from people all over the country, if not the world. That's what the full series looks like. And we're in the second episode, so the second yellow block of this level 2 module. The one after this, I'll show you in just a second. We're in this middle triangle, how we fight organizing and resistance. And our topics today will be building power through organizing and resistance in practice. We also recently finished How We Win Nonviolent Civil Resistance, where we covered how authoritarianism affects us and what is nonviolent civil resistance. And then finally, next week, we'll be covering digital hubs using Discord, which is an online community platform. And we'll have 2 moderators from the Resist Trump campaign's Discord server in here to talk about getting started with Discord. And we want to share voices from the Resist Trump campaign Discord server from actual users talking about their experiences in the Discord. I want to go back to the prior slide and just recognize that the module that is currently scheduled for July 17th, which would normally be the module that is the first gray block to get us out there, we are going to postpone the webinar series that week because maybe a large mass mobilization event that's taking place all over the country, maybe even in your city, called Good Trouble Day. And we want to not force people to choose between this series and Good Trouble Day. So we're going to be postponing the series that day to the next week, July 24th. So the entire series will move back a little bit and we'll take that week off. And Carolyn just dropped a link to the goodtroubleliveson.org in the chat, which refers to that same date on July 17th. Thank you, Carolyn. All right, so today's agenda. We're going to hear from a speaker, Paul Vonderhaar, who I'll introduce in a second, to talk about building power through organizing. Follow that with a Q&A where folks can submit questions into Zoom, and we'll examine your questions and then share them with Paul for about 5 minutes or so. Then we'll do breakout groups where you'll be able to converse with other members of this webinar with the facilitator in the room with you. And then we'll do a Mentimeter exercise, which is an interactive exercise using an online tool. Then we'll talk about resistance in practice and hear from another expert speaker, followed by a Q&A, a breakout group, and a Mentimeter. And then we'll do a closing where we'll review the tools that are associated with this course, such as the Google Classroom, the Learning Lab on Tuesday nights, the Discord server, and the Learning Circles, where you can engage further in the work of developing as a leader in the resistance to Trump. So kudos to you for coming tonight, and why don't we get started? Let's now hear from our first speaker, Paul Vonderhaar, and I'm just going to briefly introduce Paul right now. So Paul Vonderhaar started organizing with 5051 Austin 3 months ago with no prior experience when he attended a small rally. He noticed that the event was fairly haphazard, didn't even have a PA system. He went up to the organizer and offered to help however he could. Now that small action of going up and saying, I'm willing to help, set off a whirlwind of action that led to a series of rallies that I've attended, several of which measured in the multiple thousands of attendees, hundreds of volunteers, and even the meddling of the governor of Texas. If you're interested in learning how to organize quickly and effectively, my advice is listen to Paul. Paul, thanks again for joining us, and I'm going to cede the floor to you.
All right. My only question is, do I just say slide when I want you to go to the next slide?
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
All right, cool. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. The first thing that I'm going to ask for you in the audience, I'm going to tell you this right now. I am just some guy. There's nothing special about me. There's nothing unique about me. And if you want to make a difference, you can. And to that end, the way that you make a difference is by speaking up and building spaces where people can speak up. So I want to encourage all of you. I wish that I could take everyone off mute, but I don't think that works in this format. If you have any questions, any comments, I beg you, please ping it in the chat. And if you have ideas and you want to reach out to me afterwards, I'm sure Nevin can give you my contact information. Please, engagement is our bread and butter. Engagement is our lifeblood. The more you engage and the more you take ownership of this, the better it's going to feel for you and the more we can do together. So, if you got any questions throughout this process, engage, talk to me. You got a question, talk to me. And that's the first lesson that I really want to impart on you. Like, this is your space as much as mine. So, Nevin, could you give me a slide? So, why do we organize? We organize because we can't do it alone. There are only so many hours in the day. You only have so much productive energy. You can't accomplish all the things that you need to accomplish to affect tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people without banding together and working together. And this is like obvious, right? 2 people can do twice as much as 1 person. 5 people can do far more than 5 people individually, right? They all just got to be moving broadly in the same direction. So, if this is a core simple truth, why don't more people do it? We all know, like, it's obvious, it's clear. So why don't we do it? Next slide. The reason that people don't do it is because they lack a context of how to do it. That is to say, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's acceptable and what is unacceptable. They don't know what's effective and what's not effective. They might have some ideas, but frankly, I imagine that most people have never really asked the question deeply to themselves, how do I make a difference? What they do is they go up to someone and say, please tell me how to make a difference. When I went up to that person and asked, how can I help? I didn't ask, how can I help? Because organizers don't have the brain space or the capacity necessarily to figure out, oh, this guy's come up to me. Now I need to have a conversation with them. I got to get to know them. I got to figure out what their capabilities are. I got to get them up to speed, and I got to figure out like where this guy can slot in, right? The best way that you can become a leader is by helping create context. And by create context, I mean defining what is good and useful to do and and building a platform for people to take action. Next slide. So context is the way that you define failure and success. It's how you set goals. When you are organizing, you really need to do is you need to figure out not the hardest part about organizing isn't getting out there. You can decide to get out there and spend an hour, and it's really not that hard. What's hard is defining why you should be out there. It's defining what is a successful protest. It's defining what's a poor protest. What could we have done better? And the most important thing is you've got to create that context for what is success, because if you don't define what success is, you can never achieve it. If you don't set clear, actionable goals, you will never achieve, you definitionally can't achieve anything. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to go out there. You got to say, well, I'm going to go out there to do X, Y, and Z. And once you define what X, Y, and Z are, then success becomes a possibility for the organizer. So the lesson that I want to give to you guys, if you take one thing away from this, it's that people don't know what success looks like. The primary goal of a leader is to give a compelling idea of what success is, and then invite other people into that success. Next slide, please. You need to think of yourself as a moderator. If you tell someone, okay, success is we get 10 people out there and blah, 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 and you tell them exactly what to do, people respond very poorly to that. Nobody likes being told what to do, especially if you're not getting paid. No one likes saying, oh, you got to be out here at this time. People want to be part of a community, and people want to be heard. People want to have a voice. Nobody wants to be the first thing to say anything, but everyone wants to say something. Once you give people permission to open that conversation, people will flood in, and they will come up with ideas and do more than you ever thought like you could ever get out of them. So what you really need to do is you need to say the most important thing that you can say to create context is, I think that X. I think that this is a good idea. I think that we need these things. And once you say that, you need to say, the second most important thing you can say is, what do you think? I think we need to have an event. Okay. What do you think? Do you think we need to have an event? Okay, cool. We're in agreement. Well, I think that we need water at this event. I think we need to get flyers for this event. I think that we need to try to make media connections for this event. I think we need to make a social media post about this event. And what you need to do is you need to encourage every single voice in order to once you've established a baseline of we should have an event and here is the baseline of what we need to accomplish in order to have that event, then everyone can start divvying up the tasks, taking away the small chunks that they're interested in or able to accomplish. And then once you've got the bases covered, then you can start being like, okay, well, what else can we do? What do you think is a good idea to add to this? One thing that's really been a fixture at our event has been a sign making like table. And that's where we got like $30 worth of cardboard and markers, or, those poster boards. And we have gotten a huge amount of feedback. I kind of thought it was a dopey idea. I was like, no one's really going to care, but you know what? It's your thing. You're going to do it. Fine, go for it. And we've always gotten really good feedback of like, oh, we really liked this idea. And it was an idea that I thought was stupid at the beginning, but you want to give people room to have that idea. That's the really key thing that I want to impart. Like, you as an organizer, you are building context, you are building space, you are building a platform. You are giving people something to say, I think that's a good idea, or I don't know about that. And once you're able to build that, then organization becomes possible. Um, you can't own a conversation. You have to invite people in. So I'm going to share my screen really quick if that's possible.
It should be.
All right. Does everyone see this this spreadsheet that I have up here?
Let me stop my sharing. I think they can choose. Let me see if I can.
can
I see it.
Okay. This is the very first this is the spreadsheet that I made to basically dictate. I was on a Discord call with 15 assholes I had never met before. I basically said, "Hey, we got this date from National. I'm going to start organizing it. I want 15 people showed up and says, "Oh, hey, what are we doing? What's going on?" And literally, you'll notice most of these aren't even names. These are Discord tags. And I gave a couple of really basic ones like, okay, we got to have a permit. We got to have a PA system. Those are the two things we started with. And I literally
could you zoom in just a little bit? Thank you.
Is that better?
Much better.
I started with, in order to get this the event to work, we need a permit and a PA system, and that is the absolute minimum of what we need in order to accomplish this stuff. And I literally went down the list of everyone in the Discord call and said, "Hey, Jay, who is turned into an incredible organizer in his own right, what do you think we need?" And he's like, "Well, I think that we need to figure out transportation to help get people to the rallies." And I was like, "Well, can you figure that out?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll talk to bus routes and I'll see if I can get people to give rides." And and he took that on. And he's like, "Wow, I did not think that's something that I never would have considered as being useful. And now this resource that I didn't have before is offering to do work for me for free." That's incredible. That's what organizing is. That's what you're trying to do when you are when you're trying to get right off the ground. Here are the base tasks. What do you think you need to do? Oh, well, I think this was Yevon. Yevon said, "Oh, we should have a sign making system," or we had a chat. We kind of chatted about, "Oh, well, some signs would be a really good idea for this," and "Oh, I'd love to get people more involved." And that eventually molded into what needed to be done. We decided we needed some field medics, and we got some people out for that. We needed some people for de-escalation. And this is all stuff that came out, just bubbled out organically from people who knew a little bit more but didn't necessarily say anything, because I started us and said we need a permit and we need a PA system. And then I just went down the list of okay, what do you think we need? 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 And literally just writing down these tasks and assigning them out ended up being the first level of organization. And this was enough. This list here was enough to get 10,000 people out to the Capitol. Now, we had a lot of help on that. This was for April 5th, if any of you are aware of that. Obviously, we had a lot of help getting the word out from National and from a lot of grassroots that we didn't really do anything with, but we had something for them to show out to. And when I'm saying that if you can create a list of tasks, if you're just starting out, if you're making a 10-person protest, this is how it starts. You come up with, okay, we're going to do XYZ. What do we need to find in order to get XYZ accomplished? And as you continue and as you grow, your tasks are going to escalate. Your tasks are going to become more complex. Your roles are going to become more defined. But this core idea of, okay, from each, get ideas from everyone and give ideas and give from each, take ideas, to each, give tasks according to their ability. And if you're able to if you're able to carry that philosophy into your, if you're able to take that philosophy into your initial organizing steps, you are going to do an incredibly good job. And that's another thing that I really want to get on. If you do anything, if you've ever heard people who work out, you might run a slow mile, but you're lapping the guy on the couch. Even like leave your insecurity and your timidness at the door. This is a game of confidence, and it's a game of being willing to change the world. And if you're here, if you're giving up time at 7:30 on a Thursday, I know that you have that. So I really want to inspire you. If you think that this is a good idea, hop into the Resist Austin thing and just be like, hey, I've got this idea. Does anyone want to chat about it? Or talk to your friends who are also like this and be like, hey, I want to do this protest. And if you don't have an idea for a protest, talk to someone else who's in this chat, or talk to someone who's in Resist Austin being like, I want to lead something. I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want to do. You want to go back to the slide deck?
Yeah, happy to. Just give me 1 second. I'll do that.
Take your time. So, does anyone have any questions to start with before I move on?
We haven't seen any questions come through the Q&A function, which is the area where they could submit questions. As soon as you're finished, and I would say that we probably have about 3 minutes left, Paul.
All right.
Then we could take questions from the crowd.
All right, then let's blast through next slide. I think I've got like 2 more slides. Yeah, we covered a lot of this. Like, what are the 3 things you need to establish? What are we doing here? What is the minimum amount that needs to be done? What does everyone else think that need to be done? And who's doing what? Those are the 3 things that you need to do. And it is remarkably, like, once you just say, what are we here to do? 2 and 3, like, come remarkably easy. Slide. Once you've determined what needs to be done, the most important thing that you need to do is get people to commit to following up. It is so easy to say, oh, yeah, I'll do this. No, you can't trust people. People are going to drift away. They're going to forget. They're not going to hold themselves accountable. We're going to be here next week. And that is going to start building a habit. That's going to start building legitimacy. And if you can't do this, that's okay. We'll get someone else to cover, but you need to tell us. Getting those hooks of obligation and responsibility, letting people know what is expected of them, that is the most important tool in the organizer's toolbox. You need to be able to. It needs to be okay to let people down, but it also needs to be okay to step up. Let people rise to the expectations that you set to them, and let them have a say in setting their own expectations, and they will always surprise you in what they'll be able to accomplish for you. Slide. Okay, that's it. Excellent. Now we can go into the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. While people do formulate their questions to submit to our Q&A, there should be a button at the bottom of your control panel that allows you to do those, where it says Q&A, where you could submit something. As people submit those in, I'll kind of think about some questions on my own, but I just noticed someone did submit one, so I want to defer to them first. This is from Aaron Phillips, and this is for Paul. Is there a particular service or method to maintain a list of people or accountability? I'm assuming the rest of it is that you prefer to use or that you recommend.
So it depends. When you're starting out, look, you're gonna be lucky to have 5-10 people. You're gonna be incredibly fortunate if you have. And what's cool about 5-10 people is that just use Google Sheets. Just write it down and make sure you can find it later. Because if you can write it down and if you can find it later, that is enough of a record. Once you start getting up to the higher levels of organization, once you get past about 10 people, then you're going to have to get to a little bit more complex stuff. You'll have to figure out Slacks, or you'll have to have an actual system. But don't put the cart before the horse, get to the 10 people first, and then if you get to the 10 people, you will be a force in Austin politics. And like unironically, 10 people is an incredibly small number, like it's an incredibly large number of volunteers. If you get even 3 or 4 consistent volunteers, focus on that first. If it gets bigger, solve that problem when you get to it.
Sounds good. I've actually got a question for you, Paul. This is just a question that I was reflecting on because you were sharing, some names of like Discord usernames of folks that you had met very early on. When I work as a leader, I'm really enthralled when I see growth in the folks that I'm working with. Can you speak to the growth of anyone without naming names or whatever, of any like individuals that you've observed in the 3 or 4 months that you've been at this?
Well, I have seen someone who doesn't know shit about permitting and laws and all the technical nitty gritty details about legally having an event at the Capitol go from 0 to negotiating with the chief of police in 2 months. Like I have seen people who have obviously never managed anyone before to managing 10 people at a time and being like, hey, you go here, you go here, you go here. Uh, like there is so much space for you to perform. And because the counterpoint to that is, hey, I've had plenty of people drift away and back off and say, nah, or I've had people stay where they are, and all of that's fine. The secret is letting people rise to the level of power and responsibility and accountability, I think is the big one, that they are willing to fill. And people will always surprise you.
Beautiful. Thank you. We'll answer one last question from the audience. In order to get a group together to create an event, you would need to get the word to people. And how would you do that?
So, Discord is an incredible tool for this. There are so many people who are there are so many people that are looking to do something. Go into the 5051 Discord. Go into the Resist Austin Discord. Go into talk to your friends. Everyone's feeling the same things that you are feeling, and all you need to do is be a conduit. You need to, if you can set a context and be a conduit to those feelings and to that sentiment, you'll be able to accomplish what you need to do. But go to where the volunteers are. So there are Resist Austin has a weekly event. There are weekly calls. There are so many in-person things where you can get plugged in and try and find volunteers. And there's so much that's going on online. Just be persistent, be authoritative, and if you've got a good idea and you're persistent about it, people will start following you. It's inevitable.
Beautiful. Well, I think that we're at the end of our time with you, Paul. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. This was really enlightening, and it's really cool to get a perspective of someone who has organized with my own very eyes as many as 20,000 people at the Capitol, which is just amazing. So kudos to you for the work that you're doing. Please keep it up for all of us here in Austin and for all of your 5051 cohorts around the country. You're welcome to stick around and hang out if you'd like, and we're going to break out into breakout rooms in just a minute. But did you want to say anything as a final word?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'm just some asshole. You're probably just some asshole too. There is so much room and so much space for things to be done. There is no secret sauce. There's no special thing. Just do it. Just try.
Appreciate that, Paul. You bring a nice kind of homespun perspective that I think is sorely needed. So thank you again. All right, we're going to break out into breakout groups now, folks. The title of the question that we're going to encourage you to reflect on, now that you've heard from Paul Vonderhaar, who has organized so many people, right? Now we're kind of bringing this back to the assignment and thinking about going forward, where we're only asking you to bring forward a small group, right? Just a little piece of all of that. We want you to think about what strengths or resources that you personally bring to organizing. This shouldn't say placeholder. This should just say mentee question. But you can't do everything right all the time. The mentee question we want to ask you, based on your conversation that you just had and maybe some reflection that you've been able to do in that process, is what strengths, skills, or resources do you bring to a resistance movement? And I'm going to go to the Menti, which is a website, and you're going to be able to have that thought here in just a second. So I'm clicking on the episode and I'm going to present. And what I encourage everyone, including myself, to do is to go to menti.com and enter the code that's at the top of the screen, 61654089. And let's have a little go at that question. Six one six five 4089. And what are we seeing? It took me a second to put in my thoughts. Tenacity twice, communications, care, a never-ending ability to adapt and take on tasks for the first time. I like that. Positivity, open-mindedness, creativity, time. So lots of different strengths that we can bring to our organizing practice, an outgoing approach, relationship building. Love to see it, folks. Keep those coming, because after this webinar, we'll be posting the full set of results of the input we got from the Menti. And it's always nice to see all people's different inputs and ideas, welcoming diverse perspectives, logic, and ability to see the big picture. Listening, speaking skills, very reality-based, encouraging volunteers. It just goes on and on. So thank you for that. I'll go back now to our placeholder slide, and now we'll go to our next slide. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, Jeff Ordauer. Jeff has been an organizer for over 30 years and got his start as a queer activist in college. A graduate of the AFL-CIO Organizing Institute and an organizer with SEIU in Texas, he then went on to work for the national community group Acorn and ran offices in Houston, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Connecticut, and spent Acorn's last 6 years, his last 6 years at Acorn as its Midwest director. Subsequently, Mr. Ordauer helped start up Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment, or MORE, a community organization in Missouri that worked at the intersection of economic, climate, and racial justice. MORE ran campaigns targeting the largest coal companies in the world, many of which were based in St. Louis, while also playing a role in the undergirding the Ferguson uprising. Ordauer has also been privileged to also support anti-foreclosure movements and new labor projects like organizing renewable energy workers and rideshare drivers. Jeff is currently involved with the Other Side Project, which is targeting the oligarchs who are supporting authoritarianism. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hey, friends. It's really good to be with you. And, I feel like a good, probably what I'm taking into this, I'm supposed to talk a little bit about Tesla Takedown, and what sort of Paul said, and then what I saw on the Mentimeter was, just the ability, people's really willingness to experiment, to take the leap, and to try things and to do things is what I think is really, really key to do, particularly in these times. If we're fighting some, the largest, the biggest, the wealthiest powers in the world. And it's going to take that level of experimentation. It's going to take that level of like the cycle of let's try a thing, let's do it in a very rigorous way, and let's see what we can learn from it to take us to the next level. And I know with this course, Resist Trump, this sort of course of action, you all are doing something similar where you're doing gatherings, you're doing some smaller protests, and then leading up to something that's sharper. So very excited. And I think Tesla Takedown fulfills some of that level of experimentation. So first of all, I want to say three things. So the first was trying things. The second is, I think, really listening to, and again, this was what was emphasized from Paul's presentation as well, and I'm sure throughout, is really listening to people, creating the means for everyone to participate, have roles, and really have some level of democracy. And then the third thing is courage. There is really no, and I didn't see this on the Mentimeter, but there are going to be times in all of this work where it's not just tenacity, but a little bit of courage is going to be required as well. And so I'll talk about that in the context of Tesla Takedown. So
Jeff,
first,
may I interrupt you for a
yeah.
second and just ask you, can I stop sharing so people could see you full
Yeah,
on? Would that be okay?
Of course.
Okay,
I
because I
didn't know
don't think we
people
have
could.
slides today, right?
I don't have slides. I'm sorry to make
Okay.
slides.
You're fine.
Sometimes I
Let
don't
me
know what
just
I'm going to say because I'm playing off of others. So feel free to put stuff in the chat too. Because I respond. I'm more of someone who's ad libs. Yes, I didn't realize you were sharing my picture, which is, I'm sure I look better on the picture than I do in real life. But so Tesla Takedown started with the Blue Sky post. Joan Donovan was sort of did some had done a lot of work to study Musk and some of the problems, and said, I think we should be protesting Tesla, and put this on Blue Sky. And I think the original like had, I don't know, still only has like 600 likes today. But folks in Boston, they knew some people were willing to try something. And then a couple other people, including some big influencers. So Alex Winter, who was, I think many of us are from a generation that might know of Alex and have seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but also now a documentary filmmaker, saw this moving and said, oh, I need to amplify this. This is something that everyone should do. And as this was starting in early February, one of the things that we saw was, or that I saw, I'd seen this, and a couple other people that I work with had seen this, and work with, I mean people who are following the movement, not people who I work with professionally. And we thought, well, what can we do to support this if this is happening? And how do we create some means for everyone to be able to not just see what's happening on Blue Sky and call an event, but also how do we provide the means for people who are brand new to be able to do something on Blue Sky as well. And so I'm going to be able to do something at Tesla as well. And so that was kind of the origin, is that the first events in Boston were small, but very quickly within the first couple of weeks in February became huge. And I think for those of you in Austin, you saw that too. I happened to be in Austin on business like February 13th. And so we put something up on Blue Sky saying, here, there's an event in Austin. And it was I wish I had remembered where it was the Tesla dealership in the north at the mall. I don't know. And I went to that, and I brought some poster board and some markers. And so then people were like, oh, you're in charge because you brought poster board and markers. I'm like, I don't know a soul in Austin, but about a dozen people showed up to protest at the dealership. And of course, everyone could make a sign. Some people brought their own, some people brought flags, some people brought props, some people brought ketamine or fake ketamine. But it was, a couple dozen folks. And from there, I know it grew to hundreds. And so the second thing that happened was hosts started being creative, right? People set up their own Tesla Takedown Fort Lauderdale or Gresham accounts and were able to really do this. And then we had some communications professionals. So we set up formal social media for Tesla Takedown, right? Set up a Blue Sky, set up an Instagram. There was a website that some of the folks had set up early on so people could post their actions, and then people could go to the website and look for actions. And then if they registered, so it was a way to kind of grow the organizing in a more rigorous way. You didn't have to be luck of the draw on Blue Sky. You could go to a one site on the Action Network and see what you could do. And then also to have some people to amplify what was happening, call some hosts, reach out to them and say, hey, do you want to talk to the press? It really became a movement. And I think that's so important. What we do is we don't always know what's going to happen, but it's really important to try and see whether or not something's going to move in that direction and can really take off and become a movement. And then being flexible to hear what people really need, and know what's happening and have that level of communication so that you can pivot and make adjustments. So for example, I'll give you the very specifics. So the first thing is we tried something. Folks in Boston put out the call. We tried to spread it to other places. It worked. And then some hosts were like, well, what if we tried to do it in all the Tesla stores? And so that's when March 28th happened. where there was a call to do an event in every single Tesla store across the country. And we came close. I'd say we did about 85 to 90% of the Tesla locations. The showrooms are not really stores, but I'm not interested in using their language. But that was then lots of hosts being like, oh, wait, I've been on this call and I see that there's one missing in this location. I think I have a friend there. Let me see if they can put something out there. So again, the movement really spread, and that's what happened. And I think that was pretty significant. But what we needed to prepare for, as now a small team of 5 or 6 volunteers who are supporting this nationally, is we didn't know what kind of pressure was going to happen. So we were worried initially about police repression. I think you all remember, they were threatening. So there was also arsons going on and a couple things, very overblown, but there were some incidents at Tesla at showrooms. And we were worried about the crackdown because you had Pam Bondi running around and saying folks were going to get cracked down on. But what was really the hosts were worried about was they were getting doxxed. So they were being threatened with having their addresses put out publicly or being mentioned on all the right-wing blogs. And the Proud Boys were threatening to show up. And so that's where the third part comes in, which is, doxing is a really horrible business, is folks had to make a decision. If you were in a smaller town or a smaller city, were you going to back, how worried were you? And what did you need to do, both about the security of your event and what might happen to you personally? And there was a prominent story, someone in Seattle who had led some of the early Tesla takedowns, Val Costa, said rather than withdrawing, she was going to go public. And she talked to every media source that she could to say, look, this is what happened to me. I was threatened. I'm being outed, and I'm going to stand up. And then we hosted a webinar for people on de-escalation on 3 hours notice, because someone was like, well, what if we just ask people, give them some skills for de-escalating if something's going to happen and the Proud Boys are going to show up. And, we were full at capacity, like 500 people showed up. We offered it to everyone on 3 hours notice before March 28th. And then to a person, the hosts who were publicly identifiable on Action Network were all said, look, this is what we're here. We're very clear what we're here to do. What we're here to do is within our First Amendment rights. Let them try to dox us. Let the Proud Boys try to come. We've got some skills in de-escalation. We've got some people ready to go, and we're going to do it. And that was a huge turning point because things could have very easily flipped the other way. People could have been fearful, but instead they had the courage to go forward. And we've seen the effects of what happened with, the real impact on the share price, on Elon's reputation. We aren't going to take credit. Tesla Takedown's not going to take credit, but we were a piece of the puzzle for some of the rifts between Trump and Musk. There was huge pressure, but also the unprecedented set of things. The fact that, there was a car commercial on the White House lawn, right? That the level at which this was not just irritating, but influencing the stock price, influencing the sales price, influencing the long-term viability of the corporation was super significant and something that was totally launched by volunteers and by people not knowing exactly what they were doing. But like me, showing up with poster board, or in many cases, people were a lot more creative. And I know, Carolyn, you asked, like, what are people planning for June 28th for Elon's birthday? But being more creative, right? DC, every week, they were having a dance party. People were dressing up. There was a famous dog that came. There was like an Instagram famous dog that came to all the protests in Seattle. People brought food. People brought bands. There was music. There was fun. It was the kind of event that became a happening. People would go out to the Tesla protest, and then you go to lunch, you go to brunch, or you go to lunch, or you hang out with people. And so that level of everyone kind of iterating on a concept and a theme, making it useful for their local area, making it fun, making it celebratory, made it the kind of thing that people wanted to come to week after week and actually incorporate that. And that's when something really becomes big, is when people are doing what they do and they incorporate it into their daily lives. It becomes part of the culture of what we're doing. And that's, I think, what we're striving to do, is have that level of stickiness and kind of cultural effects of protest and building things. So again, just to sort of recap what the three pieces were. One, someone put something out there, and then they were trying a thing in Boston that ended up being successful. And some of us saw that and said, how do we promote that? And how do we make that useful for everyone? Because we think this is something that everyone will want to do. And there's lots of times where we try to do that with a theme and it's failed. But in this case, it was the trying things. The second was really listening to what people needed. So it's, having calls where hosts could get together and say, we need resources on this. We need coaching on what to do with the police. They actually didn't say that. Or we need a toolkit. We'd like to know if we sign up to do an action, what do you do? And so if people signed up to host an action, there was a couple pages of an explanation of here's how you do your basic Tesla takedown event. Similarly, we need de-escalation skills. So it was like, how do we listen to people? How do we create a way where it's not what we think as organizers, it's what people think and what they're willing to do. And then finally, whether you're leading towards actions in civil disobedience, whether you're taking on powerful corporations, whether you're doing things that could be questionable, and depending on where you are, given how contested political space is in the US right now, courage is going to be absolutely essential for whatever it is that you're doing. And so those three components made Tesla Takedown work and viable. And then the last thing I'll say is I'll talk about where we're going. I don't know if I hit time or not. Let me know where I am. Okay. So where are we going? So we know that there's only so long that people can do a specific thing, as fun and as celebratory as it is. Also, in a lot of the country, summer is very hot and people don't want to be out for 2 hours in 98-degree heat in a good chunk of the country. So what are some other things that we can do that are going to be effective? So again, this is a group of 30 to 50 hosts getting on every month and strategizing together. We decided to do three things. We decided to, number one, have kind of certain dates that we emphasize. So in this case, it's this coming Saturday. It's Elon Musk's birthday. So how do we ruin his birthday? By having 100 Tesla takedown protests. And people are going to have all sorts of fake cake and props. And, for those in Austin, see the blow-ups of Elon giving the horrible salute. All of those kinds of things are going to be happening at Tesla showrooms across the country. The second thing is we wanted to get some hope. People had indicated they wanted some things. So how did we crowdsource, or how do we get a little bit of money? So if people need a shade tent, or they need misting fans, or whatever it is they need to keep people out there, there's a little bit of a budget to do that for those who need it. The second thing is, how do we take the fight in other directions? So Tesla Takedown has done some damage, but we know he's still the richest man in the world. There's still 6 corporations. They're still deeply embedded in government, despite some of the rifts between Musk and Trump. And we suspect Doge continues to do its work. We suspect that Tesla's gonna, that Musk is gonna come back, right? This is a story we've seen with Trump a million times, that they fight and then they get back together. And so the second thing is, this campaign launched against T-Mobile. T-Mobile and Starlink are intertwined, and a letter went out to the CEO of T-Mobile, and you'll be starting to see some actions and protests and petitions and other things against T-Mobile. And the second wave was, there's lots of other things people can do locally, including getting cities and states and counties to pull their money, pull their resources from Tesla. Now, that could be divesting from Tesla stock that's in their pension funds, or it could be what the city of Charlotte just did, which is they're buying a new fleet of electric cars, and they're making sure that they don't purchase any Teslas as part of that fleet. So getting dedicated volunteers who have been in the streets, or who know people who have been in the streets, to then figure out how to get city councils and other places to do that. And so those are the next directions where the Tesla Takedown movement is heading. And then we know there are lots of other friends and friendly organizations who are doing things like messing with trying to figure out how to make sure that the full self-driving is safe, because right now it's not, and folks can talk about that. So it's really, really important that we think about those options as well. So that's where we're at with Tesla Takedown, and we will continue to iterate. We will continue to have a way for people to be able to vote, to weigh in, to have a democratic space to figure out what they need and what folks who are thinking about the national coordination can do and how people can make decisions together about what they're going to do. And maybe the last thing that's important, and maybe you've learned about this or done this in your organizing, is it's not it's democracy in the sense, like, it's not that we have to vote and everyone has to do the same thing. It's also creating new avenues. For those successful weekly actions at showrooms, those should continue. But other people from those groups should think about city divestment. And other folks should be going after T-Mobile, because we have abundance. There's not a shortage of people who have the courage and are willing to stand up and fight right now. And so it's giving people the appropriate avenues that match with their skills. That's what we're trying to do as facilitators, as organizers, as catalysts for change.
Wow. Thank you, Jeff. That was wonderful. And it's such a privilege to hear from someone with your many years of experience in organizing and the kind of insider view you have from the Tesla takedown movement. Thank you so much for that. Well, I want to invite the people who are in the audience to submit their questions into the Q&A function. We've got some comments, which were really nice to see, but I am curious if people have questions. I also want to invite Carolyn, Tracy, and Paul to ask any questions if they might have some while those questions come in. Paul, you just came off mute. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So, what resources do you think are most necessary to activate these people that aren't? What do you think is the resource that is most necessary to bring people from more like a casual volunteer into a dedicated organizer? What's the juice that we got to put in the system?
I mean, I think the most important thing we can do, are you talking about if there are people that we are in contact with?
Well, I'm asking, like, us as individuals, what's stopping people? Like, people want to do this. I think that's part of the theory, right? People want to organize, they want to get up to that next level of responsibility, organization, and activity.
Yeah.
I guess the question is two parts. What is the number one thing stopping people from doing that? And what is the resource that we can leverage to remove that barrier?
I think there's two key things stopping that, which is, I think, number one, people always assume that others are experts and have it and have a plan, or not always, but very often you're like, oh, this is a thing and it's happening. And so, and then the second thing is they don't always see where they can fit in, that it's not invitational, that sometimes it feels cliquey, and so they don't know how they can participate and how they can get on board. And particularly, it's like new and it's counterintuitive and it's a thing. And so particularly with big actions, people know how to show up, but they don't know how to get involved, and they assume there's an inner circle. And so we think about what are the different ramps, pathways that people can get in, which is why we were offering calls and other things and an opportunity for people to sign up. And to combat the imposter syndrome, it's why Tesla Takedown had a toolkit. There's like, no, you can do this. Sign up, you'll get a toolkit. And we also actually had a couple of volunteers coaching. So we had office hours. So you could hop in and be like, I've never done this before. What should I do? And there was someone on a Zoom who was hanging out for an hour or two to help coach people. Now, what do we do to get people who are casual participants to the next level? The thing I will say is, if we're watching people and they're showing up, it's engaging people and asking them to do things and giving people a role. I mean, I even think about this 30-something years later, when I'm at something and someone gives me a role, I am very fanatical, even if it's a simple role, about fulfilling that role because it feels useful and interesting to do that and important. And I understand why if I understand why that role matters, which I usually do. And so I really wouldn't underestimate the importance of asking people if they can do something. And I think it's very easy as newer people or even as experienced people to think that because I'm leading the thing, I need to take responsibility for everything. And you're overwhelmed, and then you end up doing all the things versus taking the time and being like, can you do this? Can you be in charge of this? Or can you figure out this? And that is, I think, really asking people is so important. And I think the best people, the most thoughtful people, aren't going to jump and immediately try to assert or assume leadership. They're going to wait to be asked because they're being respectful of the leader. And those are the kinds of people you want to ask to be doing things, because those are the ones who are looking around and sort of saying, oh, what's going on? But I don't want to mess because I feel like Nevin's got it and he's got a good plan there. But if Nevin asks me to do something, then it's much more likely. And I think we don't ask enough. And what's the worst thing that happens? Like sometimes we're a little fearful to ask. People say no, they can't do it. And then we figure out, are you saying no because you don't know how, you don't have the confidence, or you don't have the time? And it can be simple things, it can be complicated things.
Thank you for that, Jeff. That was wonderful. I want to just touch on a question that came in from the audience that I think you'd be eager to answer. They were curious about T-Mobile. What is T-Mobile's relationship with Tesla, and why is the Tesla takedown movement considering T-Mobile a new focal point?
Yeah, so T-Mobile just started a major partnership with Starlink, which is Musk's global internet empire. So we feel like that's they are movable to potentially peel them away from Starlink. And that we think that's something. And then when you think about what are good targets, right? Tesla is important because it's Musk's only publicly traded company. So there's leverage there. There's leverage around the share price. T-Mobile, what, a fourth of us have T-Mobile phones. So there are tens of millions of people who could be involved in calling, writing, or changing their cell phone plans. So those are the reasons for T-Mobile, and T-Mobile and Starlink are intertwined in terms of how you get your whatever they have, their 12,000 G system or whatever they're claiming they have now.
Beautiful. Carolyn, go ahead, and then we'll probably go to breakout rooms after that.
I just want to ask if, was it T-Mobile that had the huge contract with the federal government that Elon Musk came in and took away from them because he wants Starlink to be the link across the country?
I don't know which contract, but it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, certainly they are, as we're seeing, right, they're leveraging every piece of the government to move money to SpaceX, Starlink, Tesla, anything they can do. But I hadn't seen that. But if you could share that, I'd love to see it.
Okay, I'll find it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks again, Jeff. That was a wonderful presentation, kind of just an exploration of your wisdom and answering some questions that came into the audience. Thanks again. I'm going to share my screen and take us back to the next breakout group, which is, you heard about protests, boycotts, and maybe other actions that you can take in this conversation. And we really want to bring this back to your own community. And so the question that we want to pose in this next breakout group, and we are running a little bit behind on time, which is fine, but just keep that in mind because we may go a little bit past 8:30, maybe to, I would say at the very latest 8:40. What's one nonviolent tactic from the talk that stood out to you, and could it work in your own community? Why or why not? Okay, so we're gonna hear a little bit about from this placeholder for Menti integration. What's one nonviolent tactic that stands out to you? And let's go back to the Menti, and we'll go to the one. This is going to be a word cloud. This is kind of fun. Again, want to invite everyone to go to menti.com and use the code 61654089. So let's see what we have to say there. I'm going to write protest, boycott, and piñata, because we're slated to have a Cybertruck piñata at our protest in Resist Austin this weekend. Looks like boycott and marching have entered the fray. Target takedown, nice. Art, marching, show of force, wow. Snarky shirts, paper mache. As you can tell, the First Amendment is a beautiful thing. These are all aspects of protests that we can use to petition the government for a redress of grievances in a peaceable way. songs about Trump, organized letter writing. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Again, feel free to continue writing in those. And once they all get submitted, we'll be able to submit them back to the Google Classroom, which I will talk about in just a second. As you can see, they keep coming in, and that's great. All right. I'm going to switch over back to the presentation to do a quick review of what's coming up next. I think this will take at most 5 minutes, and then we'll be all good to go. So what's coming up next? Google Classroom. Keep in mind that you can take a picture of this slide to get to the Google Classroom, and alternatively, I will write the links in the chat for how to get to the Google Classroom and the Leadership Lab, because that may be helpful for you as well. Just put the Google Classroom in there. Now I'm just going to talk. I'm just going to talk through the Google Classroom real quick. Here we go. So what is the Google Classroom? I know we've talked about it before. I'm just going to show you what it looks like from my point of view. This is kind of what it looks like, right? We have this classwork, which is totally optional. We have different modules, and I'm going to click all topics. In fact, I'm going to go up and show you that we've got episode 2, episode 1, and episode 0. Episode 2 has a couple of questions that it has been released as of this webinar. This question also needs to be released, so I need to fix that. Let me go ahead and fix that right now. I think I can fix it by just taking away the scheduling and then just asking the question. Yep, that'll work. So now there are 3 questions, all due on Tuesday, July 1st at 12 p.m. You can still answer them after that, but please do consider answering them by Tuesday. And once you check the question, we'll look at this question, this first one. After watching episode 2, do you believe in the power of protest and/or boycott to effectively resist authoritarians? Why or why not? And we just asked you respond in 100 words or less. That's like 3 or 4 sentences, maybe 5 sentences, maybe a little bit more than that, or less. So 1 or 2 sentences will work too. Then the next question is, what does building power through organizing mean to you, and how might it look in your community? So we just want you to engage very briefly. And then we also want you to think about that assignment, which is coming up. And we encourage you to host that event by July 20th. And we want you to think about the location for the get-together. Where are you planning to host it, and why does that location make sense for your goals? And then if you look further down, you'll see that assignment is due July 22nd. And the assignment is basically to use the mobilize form that's in that assignment, right? Which is right here, to register and promote a get-together, and to actually host that get-together no later than Sunday, July 20th. Then host your event before July 20th, or at the latest on July 20th, and then write and submit your reflection. There are many events coming up between now and then that could be potential protests. You could have a meetup on Good Trouble Day on July 17th. Just at your local protest, you could have a little meetup, or you could have little get-togethers, in a much simpler way at a cafe or at a library, just to get the people together. That form has filled out information that walks you through, kind of like a toolkit about how to go about your event, and it's already titled for you. It's got a graphic and it's got a description that you can use. So consider that for sure. All right. Now going back to the presentation, I think it's this one. We've got Leadership Lab on Tuesday nights, which is an optional way to further engage in this course. It's a way for you to volunteer for a role that involves a little more responsibility, like being a facilitator of a breakout room. Everyone here is working as a volunteer and is in the course, so feel free to consider doing that. That's Leadership Lab, and I just put that link to Leadership Lab in the chat. And then finally, the Discord, you can click on, or you can use your camera to get into the Discord, but if you want to use the link, I put that in the chat too. And we've got a Learning Circles channel, I should say Learning Circles, not Learning Pods, where you can engage with people in your geographic area. In our next episode, we're going to have J.E. and Sordidly Speaking, who are both Discord moderators on the Resist Trump campaign server. talk about the basics of Discord and do a panel discussion. So look forward to that. Folks, it's been a pleasure seeing you all here tonight and being here with you and our guest speakers and our moderators. I want to give a special thanks to Carolyn Barcliff and Tracy A. for helping to moderate tonight, as well as Braden and obviously our speakers as well, Paul and Jeff, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.